here we are with Avec Inifini Regret, which translates to with infinite regret, but strangely, they made it with great regret. And that's not how, I don't know, that's not how I would translate it, but I do not know French to English well. I checked in Google to make sure I understood, because it looked pretty clear to me. This is, I think, my final game in the Musket and Pike series, supposedly, according to BGG. The way they put it, when you look at which games, you know, they list these Invictus ones, which go back to 2003, about the same time Musket and Pike was coming back out. What is it? An evolution of Paris va beyond un mouse, and uses the same system then in Newport and Kilcombe, a couple of magazine games. It's not the same system, and that becomes fairly clear when you look at the counters. There aren't all of the representations that there are. It's very similar. But I feel like, I think Hull designed this first and then made a modification, they put it as a simplification of Musket and Pike, but I don't think of it that way. To me, it looks like a different system where maybe the GMT support allowed more counters and therefore more capability to express what he wanted to express. Unfortunately, they're also not convertible because it is significantly different. For example, consider the melee table in the Musket and Pike series, which I could show you, but it's basically simply a list of effects that happen to the losing side, and then the winning side takes a formation hit. There's also not the distinguishing between formations and formation hits and morale hits in this. It's all one sort of slew of factors. Normal disorder, shaken, and broken. And it combines that morale and the formation hit. I think it's reasonable to lump them together. I'm not terribly disturbed by that, but again, it's a significantly different system. You don't have army commanders in this. The orders, instead of 4 different order types, there's 3. You don't have a receive charge type of order. Rallying is done just by the leader and is not really, as far as I can tell, impacted by the order's circumstances. The leader can rally units that he's held back. There's no concept of infantry and cavalry wings, although, and that's really important because here, all 4 wings are actually, that are in this battle, are actually mixed wings, which would count as infantry wings in Musket and Pike. Instead, what they do is they simply say that cav units can be 3 away from their command source. And remember, it's still chained. I'm going to hit the rules of this because they are significantly different. You have a much more complex combat modifiers table for the melee situation. Now, what's kind of odd is that they made certain modifications because this is, these battles start in what, 1562? I thought it said 1563 here. 1562. Onward. which is actually kind of late for musket and pike stuff. This is post 30 Years' War and going into, well, this is handling the wars of religion, Catholics versus Protestants with the French. All those different kinds of unit types, instead of representing them simply with an image, they're represented with a letter up here. You also have a nice factor, which is the wings are represented by individual colors. So here, I was worried that there was both green and blue. I think it's the same color, but I have real problems distinguishing greens and blues when they're close in shade. And it looked to me like there were two different colors. But anyway, all the green is over here in this wing, or all the blue, I don't know. And all the red is over here. Trying to think what else really struck me. There are significant differences. Like fire combat has different rules. You pay movement points to fire, which is not in the musket and pike system as far as I recall. Just a whole bunch of very, very different features that are in play here. But the sequence of play is essentially the same. Then again, there are a lot of games that worked off of one way or another, say the TSS system, the Great Battles of the American Civil War, and many of which are outside the American Civil War significantly. Off that original system, and honestly, I would say that things that come out of the modern GBACW are more different from the original than some games that are, you know, more closely directly derived from it, right? You know, they may add one little thing or something, but the difference of, like, you know, an I go, you go to a chit pull system is relatively big, even if all the other rules stayed the same, which they didn't over the years, because there's been like 3 iterations of that. And, you know, that's the kind of shift that I feel is along the lines of CWB to, well, CWB regimental subsystem to line of battle, which is like, yeah, the game has significantly changed in such ways that it is a different series. And it really strikes me as incorrect to put these both as the same series. They're very closely related. There's no question of that. They're covering the same kind of period, and they're covering it with the same kind of command rules and whatnot. But I don't think they're close enough to call them the same system. In the same way that, like, so, I don't know, you could kind of make an argument, though, that the Napoleonic Brigade series was all kind of a contiguous flow and then changed significantly from version 2 point whatevers to version 3.0. I feel like that is almost a system change in terms of the effect, except for one thing. All the games can be played with the same rule set. You could choose to use, you know, older version rules or newer version rules in that. So that kind of makes sense. And I think, honestly, the same could be said with the line of battle versus the CWB. I think you could actually play a CWB game with slight modifications to the line of battle rules to account for the fact that it's brigades instead of regiments. And I'm absolutely certain that you can play the regimental games, the old CWB RSS games, with the line of battle rules. That is part of what the design is. So it's all, those are much more closely related. This game, I don't think you could just use the additional counters from musket and pike and play the same game, because some of the ratings are actually different. So we'll take a look. First of all, we have different types, so we'd absolutely need this new interaction and modifiers table because we have such a large slew of types. Secondly, if we look at the values, We have a fire value and a morale value. Yeah, we have both of those, I guess, in the original. Movement is actually represented on the counters instead of just saying all cav moves 8 and all infantry moves 4 or 6 for lights. We have, I think, some cav that only moves 6. I don't see it in here. These look like they're all that 4-8 distribution. For the actual what scenario are things in, instead of using a letter code, and this is fine, they use these little dots over here. And this is the first scenario, so it has 2 dots on it. The second scenario has 1. Third scenario has none. The problem with that is they're kind of hard to distinguish. And then, because of counter mix limitations, there are a couple of counters that are recorded as being for one scenario and are used in another one. And that's handled by this setup of units. It tells you the following units are used in 2 battles. So you've got to hold them out. Now, what's nice is the first scenario has all of its units properly marked, but it does mean some might be incorrect for another scenario. We shall see, well, some have to be withheld for another scenario. I have not fully set up yet. I've got to do something and put lances, which are one-shot hits, with all the gendarme units. All right. I'm going to pause for a bit, do that, and come back and then dig into the rules in depth. I picked this game up because it was supposed to be like Musket and Pike, but I also saw some differences and was like, I don't know if I want to pick up more of this series. They're not, you know, Ben Hull, except for, I guess, the first one. This one is not written by him, but it's using that system. And I kind of stayed away from the rest because I said, yeah, I just don't know. I didn't like the map. It's hard to read the hex numbers in it. I really have to squint in. And there were just a number of reasons. And I'm also never sure if Invictus stuff comes, you know, with actual counters like this one does. I did check that first. But it means a little bit more research and whatnot. I'm here actually on Friday night right now. I skipped gaming, or dancing, same thing, because my week has been too full. I did gaming on Tuesday. I went for a long walk yesterday, hike out at Clear Lake, and I'm having issues with my toilet, which I've got to get fixed, but I kind of went into really stress mode about that last night. So I decided, fuck it, I just don't have the energy to go gaming. I also slept relatively late. So there is that. Anyway, I just wanted to get that into play. I'm going to go do something else. I don't know how long it'll captivate me for, and come up and read those rules to you. Okay, let's dig in, I guess. I did find something in the movement rules which I was doing wrong in Musket and Pike that I thought was different here. So, all right. Scale is about the same. You have morale statuses of normal, disordered, which is the back side of the counter, which will have a lower movement point allowance. And that, I believe, is addressed on here. Let's see. Trying to find, within all this glare, unit status in disorder, back of unit, half movement, -1 morale, +1 fire. That's addressed. +1 fire seems a little weird, right? Yeah. The fire number you want is actually lower in this game. So it's not the same ratings. So disordered, shaken is got a status marker, and broken is on the other side of that. A lot less markers are needed, though, when you're not handling both formation hits and morale hits. Also note, there are no pistols in this, so you're not going to have to worry about reloading. So in the same time, units are able to recover both morale and formation effects, essentially, in the same time period, as well as they never have to reload their pistols for cav. All very interesting there. Wing commander always has to be stacked with a unit of his wing. If you watch my musket and playthroughs, I definitely don't do that. I want to check that because I'm not sure if I should have been. The other one I just looked up and I've been cheating, so okay. There were some times when it was worth putting a commander in a position so he could command his whole wing more effectively. And I'd put him in kind of a hole in his units or something. He's in danger if the enemy can break through or whatever, but I just thought that was okay. It's not apparently in either game. Okay, fair enough. The command value is used for modifying activation, preemption, change of orders, interception, melee, and morale check tests. Okay. You have double-sided combat units as well in this. We have a whole bunch of different types, and some of them may not seem very clear by their letter might not match to what you're used to. So G is gendarmes, C is cuirassiers is fine, R is reiters, who have pistol and armor. A is arquebusiers, fine, and E is estradients, who have lances without armor on light horses, but they don't have the lance markers. I haven't assigned those yet. For infantry, now this is interesting, like Swiss and Germans are their own types, but they may not actually be Swiss or Germans, as far as I can tell. They may be things that are similar in composition, because I think the Swiss are actually Swiss, but we shall see. T is the tercio formation, and it's just giving you a mix of what you're looking at here. So like the Swiss are heavy on pike, the Germans a little bit lighter on pike, the tercios are sitting here with a much heavier firepower capability. F is legions or old French groups, which is about the same as the tercios in terms of composition. But here's the one that makes me know that it's wrong. There's Protestant militia, some of which is Catholic, and that is all musketeers and arquebusiers. SL and R display a shield as a reminder of special rules that they have. Fair enough. See it with the S's there. There are markers for the order for wings, preemption, nature of the wing, status of a unit, while the unit is charging or is intercepted. That sounds weird. We used to have one for has attempted interception and fails in musket and pike. And if the unit is out of command, that wasn't necessary, and I look at the rules here, and it doesn't look like it is here either. Maybe we'll see something that says it, that explains why you need those counters, but the command rules appear to be the same. They're at the moment the unit is activated, not when the commander is activated. But me. On the first turn, you get to secretly choose your orders for your wings. They're revealed simultaneously. I noticed that there's no historical orders given, and there's not a lot of historical notes in the booklet. Now, I don't know if this came out with a magazine version as well, and then it was republished as a folio, but in which case it would follow kind of the SPI habit of, when you bought like the boxed or folio game, you would not get all the historical information you got in the magazine, even though you paid more money for the boxed game. And it was a higher quality, like the map would be a higher quality, slightly. You determine activations. Okay. During an activation phase, once a wing is activated, the inactive player can attempt to preempt this activation. That can be done immediately. I don't remember that being... Yeah, it's allowed either on normal activation or continuations. I did not consider doing it to just preempt the normal activation. When a unit is preempted, it gets a bypass marker. That's going to be the same rules as in Musket and Pike. I used preemption very, very sparsely in that game. And it may be something that I'm just like missing out on the value of it. You can try to change your orders the same way as you would in the Musket and Pike, where you roll going from one order to the other. The charts in this are a little less clearly written than the charts in the Musket and Pike rules. Each unit of the activated wing may perform one of the following actions: movement, including fire, or rally, depending on the restrictions of current order. Let me peek to see if I'm right about fire not costing movement points in Musket and Pike. It does in this. That does not occur in Musket and Pike, so that's cool. I was doing that correctly. And in fact, I would have known, because you can pay extra movement points to get more intensive fire in this. And again, we're looking at turns that are about the same length and units that are about the same size. So these concepts, it feels a little funny that they would be different. Some actions can trigger a reaction movement from units of the inactive player. There's also a response fire, but it's like handled a little differently in the rules, at least in the organization, if not the reality. Then melee, you can declare melee attacks with all your units that have the enemy in their front. This too is a little different the way it's handled. In this game, you're going to see that the melee, only one lead unit actually melees. Now, units melee one at a time in this, and that creates some weirdnesses. Whereas here, all the supporting units give their support in the same way that they did here, except charges and such not appear to, momentum equivalents, appear to affect the affect the results of the combat, even if you're not choosing a unit which is charging, but other units are in it. Then you can attempt to reactivate, and again, that's going to be done on... got to get used to where things are in this new table. Here, reactivations, preemptions, and intercepts are all on the same table. Once you're done, either you fail to reactivate, or if you end your activation, if a wing was preempted, it immediately gets its activation at this point. But otherwise, the players determine which wing will next be activated, and that is done Okay, we got some rules on who gets to activate when. I'm going to need to. Okay, and I'm going to need to break because my battery's wearing down, and I don't feel like I'm getting close to the end of what I want to do. You flip commanders and artilleries to the front side, the same as in musket and pike. Eliminated commanders will get replaced by their replacement. The players oversee the disengagement of their German mercenaries. Okay, so the units marked L, I don't know if I have any in this battle, are Germans, is what they're recorded as. They're mercenary units. They have a possibility of pulling back from the fight when one of their units breaks. A command in this works similarly. Unit must be in command. Unit's command status is checked just before their activation at the beginning of step 3.2.2. Oh, that's actually worded a little differently, I think. No. It's a little ambiguous, right? But I think it's the same as musket and pike, which is to say I can move my leader and command another section of his units. So if my units do get broken apart, I can command, a few of them. Not necessarily everything if they're really split apart. Line of command is 2 hexes for infantry, 3 for cavalry. Now that is different, and I explained that before. It's not by wing. Command of a unit is determined at the moment the unit begins its activation. Thus, the wing commander or another unit belonging to the same wing can move to bring an out-of-command unit back to... Yeah, they're actually specific there. And then you remove the non-command marker. So I guess they're just there as kind of reminders that there might be a problem. Out of command... Now, the rules for out of command are a little different. Must move in order to be in command again, and may only fire in reaction, and now this is really weird, may not be adjacent to an enemy unit. What the fuck does that mean? What do I have to do about it? In musket and pike, you can stay adjacent, and you can fire. So it's a little weird that these are so different in concept. When the base rules come out of the same designer's mind at about the same time, honestly. A commander is the leader of a wing. He commands all the units of that wing. He can move normally and engage in reaction movement. He must remain with the unit with which he is stacked if it advances after melee or engages in retreat or rout. He must always finish his movement stacked with a unit, and he can help with rally. In this case, he can't move. This is very different. Leaders in musket and pike can rally or reform, same thing in this game, some of the units that are adjacent to them, and then move to another set of units and do that. But in this, you're not limited to rallying based on orders. So very, very different there. If a unit stacked with the commander is eliminated in melee or after fire, the commander is removed from the game. After melee, you have to roll. You have a 1 in 10 chance of being eliminated. If the hexagon containing a commander is target of fire and it takes a hit, again, there's a 10% chance of killing. That's basically the same. If a wing commander, there's nothing about being hit if you're not in the same hex. There are rules in musket and pike for if you're walked over, you're immediately killed. That doesn't appear to be in here. If a wing commander is eliminated, he's replaced by a replacement commander. We have a number of them here in this bottom row for the different wings that are in this scenario. There's 4 wings total and 4 subordinates. But if we run out, we might be... If the commander is eliminated before his wing is activated, the wing will not have an opportunity to be activated. That's the same replacement commander enters with the same orders. If its units are eliminated, there's no replacement. It's no longer activated. There are no colonels or anything in this, so I don't know what happens if the replacement wing commander is also killed. At the beginning of the game, players secretly attribute orders to each of their wings and place them corresponding to the commander. Okay. Here are the different types of orders. Charge. A unit under charge must end its movement at least 1 hex closer to the enemy unit closest to it. I've always fudged that in Musket and Pike, and will here too. I feel like you should be able to charge things that are further away. If the enemy unit is in a frontal hex of an unbroken friendly unit, the active player can, if he wishes, take into account the next closest enemy unit and so on. That, on the other hand, I don't know if it is in there, and I don't necessarily allow you to just run forward past a unit under those circumstances. If a friendly unit is already adjacent to an enemy unit, it cannot move away, but can change facing in or perform offensive fire. Hold on, what does it say? If an enemy unit is in a frontal hex of an unbroken friendly unit, the active player can take into account the next closest friendly unit, and so on. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. March. A unit under march may move but may not become adjacent to the enemy. Units adjacent to their wing commander or stacked with him may attempt to rally. It's not really an attempt. Oh, yeah, it is. In which case the commander may not move. A unit which is already adjacent to the enemy may fire. Now, this is somewhere... This is basically the make ready rules, but you're not able to improve morale state in make ready in Musket and Pike, so that's a little weird. And then there's rally. A unit under rally may move, but may not end its movement closer to the enemy. All units may attempt to rally. A unit already adjacent to the enemy may fire. So it got rid of the receive charge, which feels kind of weird anyway. I kind of like what this is doing better, but okay. Receive charge gave an ability to dress your line all at once very easily, and some capability to rally morale state. This one, the two are the same thing, so who knows. A wing that's just been activated may attempt to change its orders, and that is done by rolling on the change of orders. And you can fail, in which case you stay under the current orders and have to abide by them. Under charge order, a commander must move with a unit of his wing. Under a march or rally, a commander may move unless he's helping a unit to rally. I was kind of hoping under charge you could help units to rally. But you will not be able to help anything to rally because you will have to move all of your units at least 1 hex closer. Facing. Simple units, those are 1 hex units in this, have same facing as Musket and Pike, 2 frontal hex sides are in the front, 2 flank, 2 rear. A 2 hex unit has 3 frontal, 3 rear, and 2 flank. Cav can change at a cost of 1 movement point. Infantry can change facing at a cost of 2. This was something I forgot about, or just didn't, between plays, and I was allowing heavy infantry to change facing at 1 movement point, which was probably unreasonable. They were a little too fluid. But these units can countermarch, turn 180 degrees at a cost of 2 movement points, and this is also part of Musket and Pike. Artillery can change facing as many vertices as they wish. Instead of firing, it will get an offensive or defensive fire marker, which is your way of keeping track of. So artillery in Musket and Pike get 1 shot per turn. In this, they get an offensive and a defensive fire each turn. That's going to take some getting used to. The double units are able to countermarch switch facing for 2 movement points. They have to take a morale check if they're in an enemy's frontal hex to do this, and they might get shot too. If it fails, the movement points are spent without changing facing, and the unit's status decreases by a level, i.e. it takes a morale hit. A double unit can change facing during movement, and that's by pivoting. For melee only, an unbroken TL or S unit in defense is considered to only have frontal hexes. This is almost like an automatic hedgehog. Now, TL and S, let's take a look at what they are. I know L is the German mercenaries, and S is the Swiss. T is the Tercios. So this is an interesting thing. They don't have the hedgehog in here, but it's automatically in play. Maybe because of the length of time in turns, but I don't know. And we're running out of battery, so we will pause again because I like to pause. Okay, continuing on. I feel so beat up and tired already. It's like, you know, not even 4 in the morning. And I don't know. Okay, so movement is pretty normal. We've got a terrain chart here, which is pretty limited. Slopes cost additional. How can we see slopes? See, this looks like farm. I think the slope is here. What's not clear is whether the light terrain is the higher or the lower. That is not made clear, and this is a really odd thing because in the musket and pike, what we saw is they kind of didn't follow a standard at all on that, which is crazy. Looks like it's going downhill towards the lighter. So the light terrain is the lower in this. I don't see a stream or anything to help me understand that. So whatever's. Maybe it tells me here. Talk about maps? No. It does not. Alrighty. Like in musket and pike, you have a reaction movement. When somebody moves into your reaction zone, if a unit has a slower movement allowance, if it has a slower or equal movement allowance, it allows for a reaction move. Now, reaction moves are more complex in musket and pike. You can shift like a hex side in reaction movement regardless of movement point allowances. You can't run away from units that are faster than you. Well, that are as fast as you. It says attempt a reaction movement. That sounds a little weird because it's kind of automatic in musket and pike. Facing change. You can change one vertex at a distance of 2 hexes or fewer. Again, you can only do this at 1 hex if I was playing correctly in musket and pike. 2 hexes is a big deal because it means that you'll have room to change a couple of vertices on an approach, as long as the unit is slower than you. If an enemy unit spends movement points or rallies at 2 hexes or fewer, you can spend your full movement allowance to move away. Again, that had the speed restriction in musket and pike. It is always in place here. It cannot become adjacent to an enemy unit. This is only available for infantry under rally or cavalry under any orders approached by infantry. I don't really feel like infantry units under rally should have a particular capability to run away more quickly. I feel like routed units maybe should. But that's not a requirement. The active unit that prompted the reaction can then pick up its movement where it left. That's the same as in musket and pike. Interception. Now, this is not listed as well, it's under the general reaction movement, but it's not one of the different types of reaction movement that's listed here. It's its own little order, like 8.3 here is at the same level as reaction movement. Now, that fits with musket and pike, but let's see. If enemy units enter a hex in the interception zone of cavalry, you roll on the table and see if you get an interception. You get an interception marker regardless of the result of the attempt. That is essentially how I played musket and pike. I don't think it's how it's worded. I almost think that a unit might be able to do multiple interceptions. The intercepted unit loses any charge marker and its charge bonus in the ensuing melee phase at the end of the current activation. 2 or more units can attempt to intercept the same. You roll a die for each attempt as you announce it. A cavalry unit that is intercepted can carry out an action during the activation of its wing. Yeah, it gets to go again. Similarly, a unit whose wing has already been activated can intercept. Here's what's not clear: how that affects the combat. In musket and pike, you do an immediate cav attack with the intercepting unit. That works very well. It creates a lot of chaos. It's a little clunky, but it works very well. Here I have the fear that I'm simply going to be putting something adjacent and not going to get a momentum or charge bonus or anything like that. I don't like that. I don't know what I'll do. Offensive fire is a function of movement. It costs 2 movement points to do, at least. Double units pay the heavier cost for whatever terrain they're doing. They can pivot. It's all very much like in musket and pike. Stacking. Stacking is 1 infantry or cav per hex. You can't interpenetrate, except for artillery. You can walk through artillery. Wing commander must always be stacked with a unit of his wing. If he moves alone, he must end his movement in a hex containing a unit of his wing. That leads me to believe that whenever you go into a fight with a unit, you can't leave the commander behind, briefly. Like, one of the things that I would do often in musket and pike is move a unit forward, leaving the commander behind, so that I would absorb any reaction fire. And then, and another thing is that I would move the commander on his own in order to rally multiple units, and then they couldn't do anything else. Well, formation or rally, depending. Oh, fuck, I feel so tired. A unit must retreat but cannot because of stacking limits or terrain. It has to roll on the unable to retreat table. This is similar, maybe not exactly the same, as... It's actually got a big difference. It's similar to the unable to retreat table in musket and pike. But in musket and pike, a unit that is stiffened by units behind it cannot retreat and gets to roll on this table, and quite often it'll go from morale broken to a morale shaken status. It'll, again, be stiffened by the units behind it. Well, here, eliminated is very unlikely, but what is likely is reduce a level, retreat ignored, where if you're already broken and you take that, you will probably disintegrate, I assume. And then here it improves a level, but never better than disorder. I guess that's kind of like the morale shaken state, but it just happens not because you're backed up by an enemy unit. Well, yeah, it would. But it would actually improve your morale at lower levels, but of course, or at levels that aren't as severe. But you're combining formation and morale in one counter, or one set of effects on the unit status. So I don't know. Here also they have a -5 morale for broken as opposed to a 1 morale. And shaken and disorder both give morale hits against units. That's a little bit closer to the same, but -5, you could have, 2 to 3 times as much chance of surviving your morale check there, or morale differential, or whatever, wherever that comes into play. God, I feel so fucking tired. Fire. Offensive fire is a function of movement. The firing unit pays 2 movement points. Defensive fire, though, is going to be free as a reaction, I guess. Although it's not listed under the reactions. That's reaction movement. Reaction combines movement and fire in musket and pike. Although it may not have originally. I think they may have segmented them out from each other a little bit, kind of like this. Any unit with fire capacity can carry out defensive or offensive fire on an enemy unit. If the targeted unit is within fire range, within a fire zone, and the artillery, which is the only thing that can fire at range greater than 1, I guess, has to have a line of sight. And then they give the rules for line of sight here. It's traced between 2 hexes. If they're at the same level, it's blocked if it passes through something at the same at a higher level or at the same level with blocking terrain. Doesn't take into account if this is lower level terrain, which I think it is. I think I can fire over those woods. That feels a little weird. I don't know what the height differentials are, but if they're at all smooth, it's pretty unlikely. Like, chances are that the woods are actually taller than the slopes, but maybe they're not. If units are at different levels, the line of sight is blocked if it passes through a hex with a level greater than or equal to the unit with the higher level. Yeah, no shit. Or if the hex adjacent to the lower level unit along the line of sight contains a blocking terrain element at the same level as the lower level unit. So the only thing that'll block is a situation like this, where I've got a unit here and a unit here. This would be blocking terrain. But if we're looking at something like this, where I'm firing over these woods, I can still hit this, which is further away. And I'm not sure how much I believe that. But again, it depends on what the height of these woods is in comparison to the other heights that are present. So here we have players must take into consideration the ratio between the size of the hex and the difference in altitude. They give the difference in altitude 10 meters. I don't know what that means. I think that's about a little less than 30 feet. So there's no plateau effect. All slopes are continuous. Okay. There's nothing to deal with the difference between the layer cake representation and that actuality in this. but we shall see what else there is. I don't see anything else in the line of sight rules. I'm going to stop here because my battery's almost dead and I'm so tired. But we have a bunch of different types of fire. Again, over here on types of fire. It's kind of funny because unlike, like a lot of times I try to go to sleep and I can't. I know I could fall asleep right now, but I'm in the, I can't pull myself away from doing things, right? And I guess I could have, but I lit this pipe, pulled myself away from doing shit online to come here and do this. All right, types of fire. Offensive fire costs 2 movement points. A unit can advance then fire, then advance in combination, or any combination of the two, as long as it has the movement points. It can spend up to 2 additional movement points to get a +1 for each movement point spent, even if the unit's already in contact with the enemy on the fire chart. Now the fire table doesn't exist because it does something different. But what I don't see here is the introductory and retreat fire modifiers here. And what I do see that's different is, okay, infantry firing on cavalry, that penalty existed, sort of, at least in part, terrain obviously. But fire on flank and rear, that did not have a modifier in musket and pike. You can only do 1 offensive fire per turn. There's nothing like salvo fire except those extra movement points, which doesn't affect you the way salvo fire does. Defensive or reaction fire, an inactive fire unit can fire when it's been the target of fire coming from its fire zone, or if a unit enters a hex of its fire zone. This includes an attacking unit that advances after melee, retreats, or becomes broken. Same shit as in the other games. An active unit changes facing in your fire zone. And I don't know if they mentioned rallying, but that's actually one here as well. You can defensive fire as many times as you like, once for each trigger. That is also, I think, different. No, I guess not. Artillery doesn't use movement points to fire. Each turn, artillery can fire once in an offensive fire and once in defensive fire. And it has these units, or markers, which indicate that you fired either offensive or defensive. And then on the back side, it has the familiar fired side, but nowhere near as clear. There's like a little bit of smoke or something to indicate that it's fired, instead of, you know, the very clear wording on the GMT games. Okay. Now, artillery fire has a table, which the normal fire does not. Double units, each hex of the unit acts independently as 2 simple infantry units for firing. That's more or less the same as in musket and pike. In general, range is 1 hex, except artillery, whose range is 10. The frontal and flank hexagons of infantry and cav constitute their fire zone, same as in musket and pike, except the firing out the flank was a penalty, and I don't see that listed here. Like it had a different table that you would operate on. Artillery, on the other hand, possesses a fire zone of 10 hexes, and there's no different weight units, weights of guns for artillery. How is fire resolved? Each unit that can fire has a fire value indicated on the counter. I think that's the first, the number on top, rather than the one on the bottom, but I'm not positive of that. So let's look. Yeah, fire values on top, morale's the second one. You roll a d10 and apply the modifiers that are listed here. Artillery fire on Cav has a -2. That's over here, okay. If the result is greater than or equal, okay, so each unit that can fire, you roll a die and apply, I guess, to the die, the modifiers. If the result is greater or equal, oh, this is ugly. Has a fire value indicated on the counter. The player rolls a d10 and applies any of the following potential cumulative modifiers. If the result, that would be the die roll plus the modifier, right, is greater than or equal to this value, I guess the fire, we'll see when we look here. I guess the fire rate. The test is modified by the die result minus the unit's fire value. Okay. This applies to the result of the D10 from the morale test. Okay, here we have an example. Maybe this tells me. Fire value of 6 and you roll a 9. You add 9 minus 6 to your morale test. And it would make sense that it would be modifiers to the die roll because pluses are good. All right. So if we're greater than or equal to, we cause a morale test. And here, the adversary adds 3 to his morale test die result. So it's going to be a penalty on the morale. For artillery, the number to reach is given on the table for artillery fire based on the distance, and the same procedure then applies. So this becomes the fire value, I guess. And you have to get greater or equal. Yeah. So this becomes the fire value that you have to match or exceed. This is a very, very complicated way of wording things, whereas the charts in musket and pike are very easy to follow. You basically don't really, you don't need all this wording. You have a chart that handles it much like this. Okay, melee. Melee takes place at the end of a wing's activation after the player has finished all other possible actions with the units of the wing. The wing's orders have no effect, except there's that, if you're in rally, you may not move adjacent to a unit. It's got a very, very weird wording that feels like it may not even work, which is... all units may attempt to rally. A unit already adjacent to an enemy unit may fire, but a unit under rally orders may not move, but may not end its movement closer to the... oh, no, that's not the one. What was the one? I remember something that said you could not be adjacent to the enemy, as opposed to you may not end its movement closer to the enemy. May move but may not become adjacent to the enemy. Fine. That's worded fine too. I don't know where I got that from. Oh, out of command, yes. Out of command. Must move in order to be in command again, which you might not be able to do. You might not have a movement allowance. May only fire in reaction, and may not be adjacent to an enemy unit. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean. But it's different from the may not move, so I get the feeling that if you can get away, you must, if you're out of command. Which makes sense. You have to try to put yourself back in command in the musket and pike series, but whatever. All right, melee. If you've got enemy units in your frontal hex as an active unit, you can declare a melee. Inactive units that have not been designated as the target of the combat and that have enemy units in their frontal hex sides can declare a reaction melee. Now remember, some of these units have all-around facing for melee, which is weird compared to musket and pike. Like, it's obviously looking at like a constant hedgehog being possible. After the declaration of all melees, the reaction melees are resolved first. This works the same as musket and pike, followed by melees declared by the active player. So, if I move between these two units and attack one of them, the other one might be able to attack and knock me out. Now, we don't know about 2 hex units yet. They have special rules in musket and pike where they can only attack directly forward in 1 hex, essentially. The unit initiating the melee is then called the attacker. Several hexes can attack in the same turn. The attacker chooses the head unit, which is used to calculate the melee modifiers. The supporting units only add the modifiers for flank or rear attacks, multiple attackers, and a possible charge or commander bonus. These are things that in musket and pike only get added to the unit that's actually making the attack, but all units get to make an attack. We're in a problem here. An infantry unit can support a cav unit that is a head unit combating an enemy cav unit. The head unit will be the one to advance after combat if necessary. A broken unit cannot engage nor support a melee. I gotta stop there for a moment because I gotta switch batteries again. Fortunately, wow, that blinking is really showing up on the camera this time. The glare. Unfortunately, I'm very low on tea, but I need to get at least through this next paragraph. There's a lot of glare here too. In general, the active player chooses which side of the line of combat he wishes to begin and then continues down the line. That doesn't seem to be a requirement. The attacker rolls a die and adds various modifiers. When a double unit defends itself, it defends as a block, even if the attacker is adjacent to only one of its hexes. But nothing about how it attacks. Which, given the rest of the rules in this, I think it can attack out of 1 hex, if that's not different. Okay, close combat modifiers are all cumulative. Morale of the attacker minus morale of the defender. Interaction of unit types. So if the attacker is a gendarme and we're attacking an arquebusier, we get a +1. Cuirassier versus arquebusier, the cuirassier is even better. Cuirassier is better at melee than the gendarme, but these are not absolutely reflexive. Number of supporting units, +1 per, up to a maximum of 5. A double unit attacking an enemy in its center frontal hex, and its 2 other frontal hexes contain no enemy units. This is a specific case gives a +1 because you're able to get the supporting strength, essentially. So that pretty much says I can attack out of one of the sides in this one, unlike in musket and pike. Number of flank or rear hexes from which the attack begins. That's on the enemy. I get +1 for each flank and rear. That's the same in musket and pike, but you get it for... See, that's the way you get supporting units in musket and pike. The only way you get them. Value of attacking commander if he's involved in the combat. That includes on supporting units in this. Defending commander if he's involved in the combat, terrain of the defender, and a charge bonus. G's and C's, if they conduct movement crossing 2 hexes of clear terrain without crossing a hedge stream and without changing facing, they get a +2. And this is the charge bonus. This is given in musket and pike, but infantry, heavy infantry, have a limited charge bonus. And also, it's not limited to G's and C's. Arquebusiers and other cav get it as well. They're just not as good at the charge combat in general, but they still are. They're not as good at melee, but they still get the same full charge bonus. The Cavaliers cross the battlefield. Okay, whatever. Lance bonus. I still haven't placed these. G-type units have a lance. This is an additional +1. If they're attacking during melee, their first time that they're in melee, they get that +1 on their rating. But as soon as they're done attacking, the lance is broken and they no longer have that bonus. The results. okay, we have a melee table. We roll a single die, I guess, and we get, add the modifiers and we get results. And no matter what, we get an A1, which is the equivalent to the formation shaken result that you always get when you hit in musket and pike. And then the defender will also always get a D1, no matter what, which again is equivalent. But you might get much more severe results on this, and it's trying to represent the same kind of thing. What you'll see is only one side ever retreats, and one side always retreats. It's pretty much an expression of, I don't have the chart here, of the musket and pike chart in a different format, which I find harder to read, but it's more concise. And you'll get morale level shifts and retreats. Disordered and shaken units that must retreat maintain their facing. If a unit's broken, it retreats 2 hexes and changes facing. Broken units don't have facing in musket and pike. Once broken, this does not apply to other retreats. Okay. If a unit cannot retreat because of stacking limits, it has to do the unable to retreat. Artillery is eliminated if it must retreat. Artillery, I don't know if it's a type on here. It's not listed as any of these. It's not listed here as anything unless it's M. What the fuck is M? M is militia. The A here are arquebusiers. These are all things that are regular units that are defined back there. So this feels a little strange to me because artillery just lose if they're alone in melee, in musket and pike. Maybe we'll be getting to that very shortly. If the defender retreats or is eliminated, the head unit of a non-shaken attacker, the one that was chosen to spur the attack, must advance into the liberated hex. If the head unit retreats or is eliminated, the defender may advance. This is different from the musket and pike rules, where some 1-point retreats don't result in an advance opportunity. If a double unit advances, the 2 halves of the unit must advance if possible. If only one hexagon is free, it must pivot. The double unit cannot change facing after advancing. It might not be able to. If I'm attacking with this unit into here, I can't, and there's something blocking me here, I can't pivot to advance. So I think I'd just be prevented from advancing. But maybe I'd slide sideways. I don't know. That's not clear. Do we have A attacks F is on there. This looks like F. F's right in the center. That's not going to help. I can shift forward into those 2 hexes with no problem. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think I'd pivot because... No, I don't know. There's a situation that's not covered by this. Okay. Infantry can never attack cav and melee, except a normal or disordered infantry can engage a shaken cav unit. Presumably worse as well. Huh? So shaken is a step worse than normal or disordered. The idea there being that the cav formation is so broken and muddled about that they can't form up and get away. Now, if they're routing, they're running too fast. Shaken, though, has no movement allowance. It's so disordered it can't move. It can, however, support a friendly cav attack against enemy cav, regardless of the status of the enemy cavalry, i.e., the cav is the head lead unit or whatever. And here we talk about, yeah, here it is. A cav unit with shaken is disoriented on the battlefield, and then they go into a routed unit is running already. A or E type units cannot attack an infantry unit in melee unless it is broken or type M. A and E are the light cav, the arquebusiers and the atelier, whatever, which are armed with lances for some reason, but unwilling to charge. They don't have this kind of lance. I don't know what's up with that. The +1 lance bonus only happens if it's the head unit or a supporting unit in an attack, and it's automatically removed if it's the attacker or the defender in a combat. If a unit attacks a lone cannon in melee, the cannon is automatically eliminated and the level of the attacking unit is not reduced. Yeah, you don't even have to melee them. You just sweep across. Hereditary enemies. When a melee involves an S-type unit in one camp and an L in the other, S is Swiss, L is German mercenaries, the attacker can declare before rolling the melee die that he'll give no quarter. The unit that suffers an R result reduces his retreat by 1 and increases his losses by 1. His morale hit. Okay. The attack must take into account the type of his head unit, not the type of support units. I'm going to have to stop here. There's not a lot left, but I'm out of tea and the fatigue levels, man. Okay, let's see if we can finish this up. You know, this is going to be really a pain to play because the little differences, things like charts and stuff I have to work through, but there's some little tiny differences. Plus, I was doing some stuff wrong in musket and pike that I'm finding. All right, morale. Units have a morale on the counter. It's the lower number. You might have to test your morale after melee, fire, or movement. To test morale, you roll a die after movement. If the result lowered by the command value of a commander that's stacked with the unit, and in the case of fire, by adding the difference resulted from the fire roll, is less than or equal to the morale value of the unit, the test is successful. If the test fails, the unit drops a level of morale. Exception, artillery is directly eliminated. A unit that fails its rally test is not reduced by a level. Yeah, no, it's pretty important. A broken unit that fails is eliminated. A unit can never become broken because of the terrain or an attempt to change facing. Morale effect, normal, is the initial values on the counter. Disordered, movement drop is divided by 2. Morale is -1. Fire is adds 1. Shaken, movement drops down to 0. And morale and fire go 2-point penalties. The unit can only fire defensively. Broken, it can only route move. It has, I don't think that's true. I think it can retreat if it has to, due to fighting. But it doesn't have normal movement. -5 for morale, no fire. Penalties apply to the front side of the counter, the normal status. This is interesting because if we take a look, disordered is no big deal. That's the back side of the counter. But this is going to have +2 to TIR, +2 to morale. The problem with that is that you're actually going to be on the back side of the counter, and it's not going to be +2 to that. It's important that this be expressed that way, but you're not going to want the counter to be on its front side. That's just going to cause more work. Rally. A unit that rallies can win back morale by being stacked with its wing commander, an automatic rally, or passing a morale test. The unit can attempt to be rallied even when adjacent to an enemy unit, but this will provoke reaction fire. That's all the same. Rally is automatic if you're with your commander. Other units have to take a morale check. Those adjacent to their commander get a benefit from his modifier. A unit that passes its... I don't remember if that's the same. That wording was the same. I vaguely remembered seeing this wording before, and it's not how I was playing it. Now, on the other hand, it probably would work most of the time, but I'm suspecting that there were a couple of times when I'm sitting in rally formation or something where I didn't have a leader on top of the counter or next to it. Next to it's just a modifier, though. All right. So I allowed things to rally more easily. Now, army commanders exist in musket and pike, and we're running around doing most of the rallying. But anyway, a unit that, where are we? All units, okay. A unit that passes its test wins back 1 level of morale. A unit that fails its rally test remains unchanged. It doesn't go down a level. Under rally, all units in the wing can rally if it's active. Under march, you have to be adjacent to or stacked to your wing commander to attempt it. So at the very least, you get a bonus. The route phase, which comes here, pretty much where it comes in musket and pike. Each broken unit uses its normal movement allowance to move along the shortest path towards its edge of retreat. Pays normally for changes in facing. That's different. There's no facing to the routed units. If the unit cannot carry out the movement or exits the map, it's eliminated and counts against victory conditions. It costs an extra movement point to leave the map. Allied disengagement. At the end of a turn, if one or more L-type units in your army were eliminated during the turn, all other L-type units have to make a morale check. Similarly, if one or more R-type units, now L are German mercenaries, R are German Reiters. If one or more R-type units were eliminated during the course of the turn, all other R-type units take a morale test. If you fail the morale test, you get a disengaged marker. I don't know where they're sitting. They're on the back of other things. These don't have a singular thing on the back of all the counters of the type the way musket and pike has, so it can be difficult to find what you need. In particular, there's a lot of weird stuff under the lances. I don't know if the others are more reasonable. In either case, you get a disengaged. The unit acts as if it's under a rally order until the marker is removed, and the morale test has no impact on the status of the units. This is because things are going bad and these are mercenaries. A disengagement marker is removed from an LRR type unit if at the beginning of the change orders phase, the wing commander is stacked with it and it passes a morale test with the command value of the wing commander as a modifier. It then returns under orders of its wing. Given that it's under its own little rally orders, I don't think it has to, try to do anything to stay in command or anything. This morale test has no effect on unit status. And then we get to the scenarios, which I found relatively easy to set up once I had things sorted properly by dots. The dots, sometimes it's not clear how many there are on a unit. I think a letter or something for the scenario was easier to cope with under musket and pike when they give that. All right, like I said, I don't know how much I'm looking forward to actually playing this. It's got a number of factors that feel clunkier to me. And this is why I say I don't know that it's actually simpler. The original musket and pike rules were, I think, about the same size. Now, these have gotten significantly larger. I'm also looking at the victory conditions, and they just don't look like scores, and I don't have scores here. So we'll have to look on a scenario by scenario basis what we're doing now. I'm gonna load this up. I know my energy levels have been pretty low on this. I'm really fatigued, but I want to get in a position where I'm ready to start playing tomorrow.